Welcome back to episode 4 of Movie Babble Presents Babble with Brennan. I'm your host, Brennan Dubé. I got Nick Kush on today. It's going to be a good show. We're going to go through the fall movie season and all the scheduled releases. We're going to talk about some of the bigger releases, some of the smaller releases, and Netflix is actually playing some hardball this fall. They're dropping some really interesting films, so we're definitely going to dive into that as well. Nick, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm really, really excited for this time of year. I think it's my favorite time of the year because this is when all the great movies come out.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely agree with you there, and it just seems like I'm so hyped for the fall movie season. I think it's going to be a lot stronger than last year. There's a lot more that I'm looking forward to this fall movie season in comparison to last year. So it's going to be refreshing. We're going to start here with September 6th. That's kind of the first major weekend in the fall movie calendar, so to speak, kind of leaving summer. It Chapter 2 is the big release that weekend. The first film, in my opinion, it was a pretty good movie. It was enjoyable. I thought they did all the right things. It didn't blow me away, but I thought it was an enjoyable film. But the trailer for Chapter 2 was great, and I'm looking forward to this film more and more every day. Are you in on It Chapter 2?
Yeah, I'm in. I'm really interested to see what this movie is because it's apparently almost 3 hours long, which is just crazy to me. Um, at at that length, it better be all of the crazy shit that Stephen King threw into the book. Just pure, just Stephen King high on cocaine, just throwing whatever he's in there. I want space turtles. I want alternate universes. I want all that crazy it lore in here somewhere if it's going to be that length. But yeah, I mean, I'm really impressed with the marketing on this because I feel like they've basically just showed us nothing. They just showed that hey, all the kids have grown up and they're back in Derry and Pennywise is back and that's kind of where it is and so that's just kind of cool. I really don't know where this movie's going to take us and it's probably going to be fun. It's definitely a solid kickoff to the fall season.
Yeah, for sure. Director Andy Muschietti, he actually got tapped today, and well, he's been kind of stuck to this role for a while, but today he made a statement that the Flash is happening, and he is going to be moving forward directing that. So I think that's a little promising, and depending on how he does with It Chapter 2 here, because I thought he did a fine job with the last film. It definitely had a clear vision of what they were trying to do. Depending on how he does here, that might change my excitement on the Flash movie, but I think it's a little exciting for him. To kind of have huge box office success with the It franchise and kind of it's opening a lot of doors for him, so to speak.
Yeah, it's really I really got kind of like what Warner Brothers does with a lot of these like horror thriller directors, and they feel it kind of it feels like they have like a pipeline like ready to go. Like they kind of work with them for a while and like mature them a little bit. We saw it first with James Wan, who's just kind of like the master of horror films now, really. And as far as just super wide releases go, and David F. Sandberg shortly after that, who went on to do Shazam earlier this year. So it kind of feels like the same way, where they've just kind of been working with Muschietti and keeping him happy, keep him in the family, so you can do all their other big important projects. So yeah, really, really good job for him. Certainly, he's certainly have a ton of paychecks and do some weird indie films afterwards. Maybe who knows?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So the weekend after that, we're going to see Hustlers drop, and Hustlers is a very interesting film. We have Jennifer Lopez in here, Cardi B, Lizzo, Constance Wu. Very interesting cast being thrown into this film, and it's actually based off a New York Magazine article by Jessica Pressler, and it's about strippers that band together and turn tables on their Wall Street clients. And you know what? This is a movie that I don't really know what to make of it as of right now. Um, but something about it it's intriguing. What's your take on Hustlers?
Yeah, I'm the same way. This movie is just kind of bizarre when you look at the cast for it. It's Jennifer Lopez, Cardi B, Lizzo, Constance Wu, Lily Reinhardt as well. It's just like, what is this? It's just such a weird, like, just group of individuals coming together. But I don't know. I'm really interested to see what it is. There's a little bit of buzz for it early that it's actually pretty good. I thought it was going to be kind of in the lane of just pretty trashy, but highly entertaining with fun personalities involved type of thing. But who knows? And it's playing at a few festivals. I believe it's premiering at TIFF, which is kind of cool to see for this kind of movie. So it's very interesting. We don't get a lot of these kind of crime stories where it's like the lovable criminals, and we get to hang out with them. I feel like this is more of like a '90s movie that somehow made its way into 2019. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, for sure. And one thing that kind of makes this movie a little bit more promising in my eyes is that it is rated R, and I don't think they're going to hold back with some of the stuff. I think they're really going to um, go for it. And the director here, Lorene Scafaria, I don't really know much about her. Not a lot of her projects pop out to me, but for the most part, I think this is going to be a ensemble cast driven film, and it'll be interesting to kind of see these actresses and what they can do kind of in these roles. So I think it's really going to be on their shoulders, and especially Jennifer Lopez, to really ignite the rest of the cast and kind of make this one an exciting one. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting film. So that drops September 13th, and as you said, it does get a TIFF premiere as well. So it's going to be a pretty exciting release there, Hustlers. September 20th, there are a few other bigger releases. The first one I want to touch on here is James Gray's Ad Astra, starring Brad Pitt. I know you're excited for that one. I'm super excited for that one. Space films are always pretty interesting. The trailer's been great. This is a movie that has had some interesting developments over the past year to 2 years. A couple of release date changes, but it seems like there's some positive buzz out of the Venice Film Festival, so that really makes me a little bit more excited for this movie. You're definitely interested. I'll let you talk a little bit about Ad Astra.
Yeah, I'm all in after kind of the initial buzz has come through it. This movie's actually really great. I was really nervous with all those release date changes. Just September 20th is just kind of an odd time for a movie like this to come out. You'd think this might be like a summer movie or maybe a big awards movie later on, but I don't know. I was getting flashbacks to The Predator last year, which felt like it had all these great like little parts to it and a great director, a great cast, but it was just kind of a mess, and I was nervous. It's also coming from Fox, and we all know that Fox is dealing with Disney, and there's just a bunch of upheaval there. So I was really nervous, but I'm really excited to hear this movie is really good. Apparently, Brad Pitt does it again, continues his streak. Really great 2019. It looks like it's going to be for him. Really cool. I think James Gray is a really interesting director. He made The Lost City of Z a few years ago, which is probably one of the more slept on movies of the last few years. Had an amazing cast, really interesting story. I'm just really looking forward to this movie. It looks like it's capturing daddy issues and just the idea in space, which is just really fascinating to me. I can't wait. This movie looks really cool.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, what better father-son combo? I mean, Tommy Lee Jones, Brad Pitt. That's pretty exciting. But yeah, for sure, I'm definitely down for this film. Definitely very excited. Also, September 20th, we're going to see the Downton Abbey film come out. I know the TV show's been done for a few years. This is a massive kind of TV show for certain audiences. I'm not a huge fan of the franchise. I don't really know much about it. I know here and there, I have some relatives that watch the show. The movie is bringing back all the cast from the show. And the creator of the show is on to produce this movie. I don't know too much about it, but I thought it had an interesting trailer. I don't know if I'm invested enough to see the actual movie, but I have no doubts that this is going to be a big hit at the box office, especially with people that love the show. Are you familiar with Downton Abbey at all?
I have no prior relationship to Downton Abbey whatsoever. All I know is that it's basically just like the most comforting, like British drama there is. There's just people just kind of watch it, it makes them feel happy, and that's kind of what the movie trailer feels like. It's just kind of feels like people just kind of cheery, dealing with issues and being happy that they're in a really cool mansion. I feel like people who actually watch the show are like getting really going to be really bitter at me for just kind of talking so generically about this. But yeah, I don't really have much of a relationship with this, but it looks cute, and I think that's kind of what the fans of the show want. So hey, why not? It's fun.
Yeah, for sure. Not much to say there, but yes, for sure. This is a massive television hit just a few years ago, so I'm definitely going to be keeping my eye out on the box office for this movie. I feel like Ad Astra is definitely a film that's going to have some pull at the box office, but Downton Abbey is a film that is going to make some splash, especially over in the UK. We're also going to see Rambo Last Blood, I believe, drop that weekend of the September 20th. Are you a fan of the Rambo franchise?
It's such a weird franchise because the first movie is such a strong anti-war movie. Then by like the last one, he's just on the back of a tank, just mowing people down. It's just so weird. I really like Stallone. I think that kind of goes without saying, but it's incredibly uneven as a franchise, but it's always pretty watchable. So I'm kind of just hoping for the same here. I have zero expectations for it. I mean, it had Old Town Road in the trailer, which was great. That's about it. I have zero expectations. I'm just kind of hoping that it isn't the worst. So I don't know. We'll see.
So this is the fifth Rambo movie. It is titled Last Blood, and it is the first Rambo movie since 2008. Is it the last for sure? What do you think?
I'm really looking forward to Last Blood Part Two to kind of go in in line with First Blood Part Two. I would have to think so, right? Stallone's getting up there in years. Still looks great for his age, but I mean, like, God, like, how old is he now? In his 70s, 60s? I have no idea. I feel like this is just going to be like maybe his last send off to what we knew of Stallone for all those years as like the action star that we love. But yeah, I think after this, it'd be probably pretty smart to call it quits.
I definitely agree there. So then we move into September 27th, kind of wrapping up the month of September. Some interesting releases that weekend. Judy, the biopic about Judy Garland, comes out on September the 27th. Are you a fan of Renee Zellweger? Is this a film that you're looking into? I personally enjoyed the trailer. I'm looking forward to this film. I'm a big fan personally of biopics when they're done right. So I'm definitely excited for this. What's kind of your feel towards it?
I'm out. I'm out. I'm so far out on this movie. I like Renee Zellweger. I think she's really fun as an actress, but this just kind of screams Oscar bait to me. I was kind of the opposite. The trailer didn't do anything for me. It was just kind of somewhere over the rainbow as like slow motion shots occurred. And I really haven't seen anything else for this movie, which is really interesting. And what makes me wonder if they're hiding anything, considering it's less than a month till this movie comes out. Just very strange. I don't know. It really screams Oscar bait to me. That's oh, here's an actress that you like who hasn't really been around in a while, who's playing an important person from movie's history. I don't know. I mean, I'm gonna see it because I see just about everything, but I'm not. I'm not very enthused about it at all.
All right, I definitely see where you're coming from, but I hope they do stick the landing with this movie. Rupert Gould, who is the director, he's kind of making a big jump to film here. I mean, he's done a few smaller TV things in the past, but he's mostly a theater director. So I don't know how that's going to turn out with him behind the camera, but I'm definitely down for giving him a shot. He's had a long, successful career in theater, so it'll be interesting to kind of see what he brings to the table here with Judy. That's September 27th. Also on September 27th, we're going to see some limited release for a Netflix film, which will drop on Netflix on October the 18th, but it's going to get limited theater release on the 27th of September, and that's The Laundromat, Steven Soderbergh, Meryl Streep, Gary Oldman acting in this. Are you excited for this film? The trailer did drop yesterday, and it was pretty fantastic. What's your mood towards this movie?
I'm in. I am so in on this one. Just Meryl Streep in a bucket hat for days. That's all I need in this world. It looks great. Gary Oldman's hamming it up. Just looks fantastic. You got Antonio Banderas too, who looks to be a pretty big contender this year in terms of awards, because he's also in Pain and Glory, the new Almodovar film, which is apparently one of his best performances of his career. So it's kind of the season of Banderas, I guess. But yeah, The Laundromat looks really fun. It's Soderbergh back in his element. It looks like he ditched the iPhone kind of shtick that he was doing with High Flying Bird and Unsane, where he was working kind of just work shooting with iPhones the entire time. Or maybe just iPhones have gotten demonstratively better since he filmed those two movies, because it just looks very slick and very Ocean's 11-y. It looks really fun, and it's kind of in that same line too, where it's kind of criminals up to no good doing fun things. This looks like a really fun time, and this is kind of when Soderbergh is at his best. So I'm very excited for it.
Yeah, for sure. Gary Oldman's always great, and Robert Patrick's in this movie as well. It's always great to bring back one of the old Terminators. But this is definitely a really, really interesting one. The trailer has so much energy, and I'm really excited for this, and this is kind of the first one where Netflix is kind of bringing their big guns this fall because they're dropping a lot of films this year that might be awards contenders. I'm pretty interested in seeing how all this plays out. I mean, last year the Ballad of Buster Scruggs did pretty well in award season. Roma, as everyone knows, was a huge hit. It seems like they're bringing out even more this year, and they're really doubling down on what they're trying to do. What's your take on that? And do you think this is the right path for Netflix?
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because I mean, we're going to go through it soon, but we have a ton of other. We have a Noah Baumbach movie, a Scorsese movie that's apparently 10 hours long, um, and The King as well. Like they're really going for it. Yeah, it's throughout the year you're going to see them release a sextuplets where Marlon Wayans plays six different characters and it's terrible, or you're going to have Brenda Song in a weird thriller. Shout out to anybody who watched Secret Obsession. That's just one of the worst movies of this year. Anyway, but yeah, it's Netflix is really going after that Oscar. They're trying very very hard to do it, and I feel like it's one of those things where they feel like they will finally be totally legitimate in the eyes of other studios in Hollywood once they win that Best Picture Oscar or just go home with a ton of awards at the Oscars. So I think they're really going for broke. And there was even another movie that was supposed to come out this year. It's called The Last Thing He Wanted, which stars Ben Affleck and Anne Hathaway, and it's directed by Dee Reese, who did Mudbound a few years ago, which was actually pushed until next year because of the slate that they have this year. Which makes sense because they probably have maybe 4 or 5 movies that are probably going to contend for awards, or at least they're going to try to push for it. So really interesting stuff here. Who knows? I don't know if it's going to be worth it financially, but hey, Netflix, do what you got to do.
Yeah, for sure. I think this kind of, I think at some point, I mean, I know that The Irishman cost a bazillion dollars to make, but I think at some point, they might become one of the more, maybe even the most diverse studio in terms of filmmaking. As you said, there's a lot of kind of crappy, just throw it on movies on Netflix. We're starting to see a little bit more of action thrillers drop on Netflix. We saw a couple of those this year. Triple Frontier was one of them. Now we're kind of seeing some more heavy-hearted, kind of awards contending films dropping on Netflix. I think that the next step probably has to be, and it might be harder because these are films that typically do better in theaters. People want to see it on the big screen, but kind of bigger blockbuster action films. I think that there is the one Red Notice, I believe it's called, with Dwayne
Hmm.
Johnson and Ryan Reynolds. I think that's more of a bigger budgeted film that's going to be on Netflix. I believe it was dropped. Netflix picked it up. Um, but I think they will become one of the more diverse studios in terms of filmmaking over the upcoming years, and this is a huge step towards that. I'm all for doing. I think it's a pretty good move for them. And as you said, I think you're completely right. They're just trying to look 100% legitimate in the eyes of all the other studios. And after Roma last year, they're definitely getting really close. This year, depending on how these films turn out, they might seal the deal.
Yeah, the kind of the recurring theme here is that Netflix is just overpaying for a lot of talent. And I think the idea there is to just kind of get in the good graces of a lot of the better talents in Hollywood because there's just been some where it's the the final product of the film clearly hasn't been the issue for Netflix as far as it's just been kind of becoming buddies with really interesting filmmakers out there. Like we had Mute by I can't remember the guy who did Warcraft. Just really bad movie, and they're just trying to save a lot of like these passion projects. I mean, the Irishman was saved from Paramount because of just the budget just going crazy, and I mean, no one was going to pay Alfonso Cuarón the money that Netflix was for Roma to get that movie made. So yeah, they're doing their best just to kind of become sort of a factory for all these great auteurs, and I mean that's pretty smart. I mean, considering when all these filmmakers can go to Warner Brothers or Paramount or A24, all of these places have really good reputations with creators, and I mean that's just kind of smart business. I mean, maybe in a long term play, but yeah, it's definitely costing a pretty penny. So that's just something interesting to watch out for as we get 10 billion streaming services in the next few years. It's really interesting. The streaming wars never stop.
Yeah, for sure. So moving now into October, the first kind of big release on October the 4th. This is a film that's premiering pretty soon at Venice. It's going to drop at TIFF too. It's a highly anticipated movie, kind of for the fall movie season, and that is Joker, Todd Phillips' Joker, starring Joaquin Phoenix. You've all heard of it. This is a film that I'm quite excited for. I think both trailers have been pretty fantastic. I don't know. This is a movie that I'm really amped to see, and I don't know how the public's going to react to this. I mean, it's an R-rated Joker movie, but I think it's the right move. I think this is a smart move by Warner Brothers. I think this was a really interesting way to go with the character. Is this a film that you're interested in? Is this a film that you're excited for?
I am, after watching the second trailer, I cannot wait for this movie. This is probably one of my most anticipated movies of the fall. Um, just because it's so obvious after watching the second trailer and listening to Todd Phillips talk about the movie that this isn't a comic book movie, like at all. They're just kind of using the Joker character to kind of just form this drama about a man who's breaking down before our very eyes. And I mean, you watch the trailer and it's very obviously a callback to King of Comedy, where now just Robert De Niro is the Jerry Lewis character on TV. It looks really cool, and it's just very different from all the other movies we've seen. The cinematography just looks pretty outstanding. Uh, I feel like this is going to be the trend, depending on if this movie succeeds or not. That a lot of people or a lot of companies might use IP to kind of make these really interesting dramas, and that's kind of how that's how the middle movie, the 50 to 60 million dollar movie comes back, where they just Trojan horse some drama and by showing us all like a really famous character. I am very excited to see it. Just Joaquin Phoenix being weird, I'm just all here for. And I think Todd Phillips said as much when the quote doesn't really make sense when you think about it, but he's like, I didn't want to bring Joaquin into the Joker universe. I wanted to bring the Joker into the Joaquin universe, which basically means that it's just a Joaquin movie and he's just using the Joker character. But yeah, I am very excited for this movie. It looks great, really interesting, and I'm sure it's probably going to be the hot button issue too. It looks like it might be a little divisive considering our subject matter. But I'm just very excited. I can't wait to talk about it when it comes out.
Yeah, for sure. This is probably my most anticipated film of the year moving forward. The trailers, yeah, they've been great, and I'm just so stoked to see what they bring to the table with this movie. Moving to the next weekend, October 11th, we're going to see a couple big releases. The first one being Ang Lee's Gemini Man from Paramount. Ang Lee has had an interesting career. I think for the most part, he's a pretty well respected and pretty solid filmmaker in my eyes. And I think in most people's eyes, he's had definitely way more success than failure, and he's had some pretty huge hits in the past. Gemini Man, I don't know how this is going to turn out. I think that you have a pretty interesting concept here. I thought the trailers were good, but I also felt, you know what, the trailer to me, it took a couple watches before I really enjoyed it. I think the first few times I saw it, it was kind of borderline cheesy, and then the more kind of I thought about the concept and how interesting it might be, I thought it's going to be hopefully a good movie. I'm looking forward to it now. Gemini Man, what's your thoughts?
I kind of got Face Off vibes in here. It kind of felt like a throwback to like a '90s, just super, not cheesy, but kind of very over the top action movie that's very high concept. And it's just two Will Smiths beating the shit out of each other, which is just it's a great ego play by Will Smith, by the way, just really funny there. But yeah, I'm cautiously interested, I guess is the way I would describe it, because I don't think this movie looks very good. But it looks entertaining in that way. Clive Owen being a bad guy and Mary Elizabeth Winstead just chilling, helping out Will Smith as he's fighting himself. This movie just looks kind of stupid, and I have a feeling because it's Ang Lee, who's just a really interesting filmmaker and probably one of the more underrated ones of recent times. Brokeback Mountain's kind of incredible. He's made some really interesting movies and really kind of just worked with technology in very interesting ways throughout his films. But yeah, this movie I have a feeling this could be like one of the bigger flops of the fall season, because the budget is like over 100 million. Paramount's just throwing money everywhere just to kind of try to see what sticks. It's coming out in a crowded weekend too, and the Joker's coming out before it, and we have other interesting movies coming out afterwards. I don't know. I think this is like the biggest wild card of this fall season, where this movie could be terrible and flop, or it could be terrible, do really well, or it could be great and either flop or do really well. I have no read on it whatsoever. I just know that Will Smith hasn't had a very good track record in recent years. I can't really recall what the last good Will Smith movie was. Was it like, I don't know, maybe I'm not a huge fan of it. Maybe I Am Legend, all the way back in, what was that, '07? I don't really know. So that's just something to track here. But yeah, it's very odd, a very interesting one that I don't know. It's so weird. I don't really have a read on it at all.
I think the first step in the right direction was not casting Jaden Smith as the young version.
Yeah, very, very smart. Keep him away from this movie.
So one of the other kind of bigger releases that weekend is The Addams Family, the animated film. That's a movie that I thought the promotional material has been really solid so far. You have some pretty interesting directors behind this movie. Are you a big fan of The Addams Family in general, and are you interested in this movie?
I would say I don't really have like the strongest attachment to the Addams Family, but it's one of those things where if it's on, and I will enjoy the hell out of it. It's just really fun. It's like a fun way to introduce kind of just gross and horror-y things to younger kids and things like that. And it's really playful and fun. And that's kind of like what this movie looks like. I think the Addams Family is like a really interesting idea to throw into animation, because you can do really fun stuff with all the creatures and all of the fun things they run into. So I really like the concept for this film, and the trailers look fun too. It looks silly and self-referential, but yeah, like the cast is really fun here. We got like Oscar Isaac and Charlize Theron and Chloe Grace Moretz and Finn Wolfhard, and Snoop Dogg's in there too, and Elsie Fisher from 8th Grade, Allison Janney, Nick Kroll too, and like Bette Midler, like just, and even like Martin Short too. Like there's just so many people in this movie, which is, I feel like it's kind of the norm for animated movies now, where it's just to put in as many voices as possible. But that'll just add to the fun of this when you have a lot of great actors who can really inflect really well. But this looks really fun, and it looks cute, and I think this could be like a fun Addams Family for a new generation type of deal.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, the director, there's two of them, but kind of the main one behind this, Conrad Vernon, he's had a pretty interesting career. You go all the way back, he directed Shrek 2, which was a pretty damn good movie. I enjoyed Shrek 2 personally. The first two I think are great in that franchise.
The internet would agree with you there, sir.
Yep. Monsters vs. Aliens he did. Madagascar 3, which I think was a miss. He did Sausage Party 2, which is pretty interesting. He's had a pretty weird career in terms of animation. He's kind of been all over the place, and he's doing the Addams Family. So I think he got some interesting minds behind this movie as well. And as you said, I think that cast looks great, and I think they're going to have a lot of fun. The next kind of big release that weekend, it's actually a Netflix release. So it's El Camino. It's the Breaking Bad spin-off movie. Aaron Paul's back as Jesse Pinkman, and it's going to be an interesting kind of look at what takes place after the events of Breaking Bad. Personally, this is a film that I don't see as necessary. I think that Breaking Bad was really good on its own and wrapped up well. But that being said, I'm a huge fan of the spin-off series Better Call Saul, and I think Vince Gilligan and his crew have done a great job with that. So I have no doubts about how good this movie can be. I think this can be a really great movie. Vince Gilligan has an incredible mind, and what he did with Breaking Bad was spectacular. Better Call Saul is not quite there, but it's a really good spin-off series. So I have no doubts about how good this movie can be. I just don't know if we need it. It might kind of be one of those Toy Story 4 situations where you're nervous. You don't really feel like you need the movie. You feel like you've had enough, but it turns out to be really great anyways. So I'm interested in that. That's dropping on Netflix and also premiering on AMC, where Breaking Bad obviously played for many years. So yeah, that drops on October the 11th. Kind of moving on to another major Netflix release that weekend. It actually drops on Netflix November the 1st, but it gets a limited theater release on October the 11th, and that is The King, starring Timothée Chalamet, Robert Pattinson, Joel Edgerton, Lily Rose Depp, Ben Mendelsohn. I know this is a movie that you're pretty excited for, so I'm going to let you talk a little bit about The King.
I think this is the first movie where it feels like or Chalamet is kind of branching out into adulthood. I mean, he's the king, so makes sense there. But it just feels like a very strong and mature performance from him, just from the trailer. This movie looks really cool. Joel Edgerton is helping David Michôd with the writing duties on this one. I really like Joel Edgerton as a creative force. I think he's really interesting and does a lot of weird and really just diverse things as a creator. So that's really cool. And I just really like this cast. I mean, it's kind of funny because we had Outlaw King last year from Netflix, and obviously this is a little different, but it's just kind of interesting to have another King story from Netflix a year later. Basically, I think it's like the exact same release date, which is really interesting. But it looks really neat. It's this nice like throwback to Shakespeare stories. I think this is like an amalgamation of three different Shakespeare stories thrown together for the Henry V kind of legend there. But this movie looks really just not depressing, but it has a lot of weight and a lot of thought behind it. And I'm kind of here for anything that Timothée Chalamet does at this point. I think he's the next Leo DiCaprio. I think he's really great, and he's one of the few young actors who has any pull in this industry. This looks really interesting to me, and you got Robert Pattinson in there too with a wig, and Ben Mendelsohn just roaming around in the background. I'm very intrigued for this, what this may have to offer.
Oh, for sure. I think Timothée Chalamet, he's all over the place now, and I think that we're going to be seeing him for a long, long time. But he is all over the place. I mean, Little Women this year, Dune next year. He's in Wes Anderson's next movie as well, which I think might be coming out next year. We don't have a set date on that, but that's coming out at some point soon. So he's really branching out, and he's going to be all over the place over the next few years, and rightfully so. I mean, he's really kind of, as you said, the next big thing in the industry, and it's kind of exciting to see him sort of start to branch out here with The King. So that has a limited theater release on October the 11th and will drop on Netflix November the 1st. So the weekend after that, October the 18th, we have a few pretty big releases here. It's an interesting weekend because you have Maleficent, the Mistress of Evil, you have Jojo Rabbit, and you have the Zombieland sequel, Zombieland Double Tap. I think you have a little bit for everyone in this weekend. Maleficent, Mistress of Evil is a film that I don't know what to make of it at this point. It's interesting that Disney's starting to branch out with these live action takes on some of their older characters. I know that there was reportedly rumors of them looking into an Aladdin sequel, which I hope never comes out. I understand kind of the thought of making a sequel on this because the first one's not a direct remake of original source material, so I understand to some extent, but I don't know. What do you make of Maleficent 2?
I don't care like at all. I remember watching the first Maleficent. The only thing I remember about it is that I didn't like it. I remember nothing else. This movie just kind of feels like a ploy for Disney to kind of just build up its library for Disney Plus. Was anyone asking for this movie? It's like a delayed sequel that no one asked for to a movie that no one really liked. It's really weird, and it doesn't look very good. It just looks like a CGI splat throughout the entire thing. I was getting horrible flashbacks to the Tim Burton Alice in Wonderland movies there for a second, just in terms of its color palette and cinematography. I just don't care. If you want to go see this movie, sure. I'm not gonna argue about it with you, but I just don't care at all. And I think this, along with Gemini Man, I think this has a really good possibility of being another big flop in this fall season.
So the first film made about $750 million, and I do see where you're coming from, kind of saying this might flop. It's definitely going to need to make a lot of money to break even and make a lot of profits. So 750 would probably be a spot that they'd want to hit with this movie too. Do you really think that it could bomb that bad?
I mean, we're looking at the schedule, and we have Gemini Man before. I mean, we've kind of talked about that, how that's kind of iffy, and we have a lot of other interesting stuff too. Like Addams Family seems to be a good kind of dig into the audience for this one. It's pleasant horror. It's definitely for younger audiences, but there's definitely like a horror vibe to both of those movies. Then after that, we have Terminator Dark Fate kind of coming up soon afterwards. I don't. It's kind of one of those things where I thought about the Alice Through the Looking Glass as well with this movie, where it's the delayed sequel to the movie that no one was really ever into, but the first movie did really, really well, and it was kind of in the time when 3D was kind of like propping up a lot of these grosses. I don't know if Maleficent was that big in 3D as far as Alice in Wonderland was, but you never know. I feel like it came out in that same time period, so I feel like that's definitely a possibility there. But yeah, I just there's just no pulse for this or interest at all for this material. I just don't think people care. And we have so many other interesting things coming out in this fall season. I think it just could be swallowed up because there's always a few that really try to they just really try to break out and become that big blockbuster in the fall season, but it's just crowded, and I just think this is one of those movies that has that chance.
Yeah, for sure. I can definitely see where you're coming from there. The other Another big release that weekend is Taika Waititi's Jojo Rabbit. That's a pretty interesting one. I know we talked a little bit about that in one of the recent episodes, but I'd love to kind of reinvigorate the hype for this movie because it looks pretty interesting. It looks pretty good. You have a pretty good cast here: Rebel Wilson, Sam Rockwell, obviously Taika Waititi, Stephen Merchant, Scarlett Johansson. Pretty interesting group of people kind of coming together for this film. It's going to drop at TIFF pretty soon, and then October 18th it's going to get its wide release. So that this is an interesting kind of concept. I know you're excited. How excited are you?
I just love Taika Waititi. He's like one of my favorite people in Hollywood. He's just to me he's just so goofy, and everything he does is just it's just so silly, and I just can't help but laugh at it, even if it's just really dumb. But I just I really can't wait for this movie. I feel like it's one of the few movies that's kind of just pushing boundaries as a comedy these days. Which I mean, comedy's kind of been in a weird spot for a couple years, where there hasn't been a lot of great studio comedies out. I mean, even Game Night didn't do very great at the box office, even if it was really fun. This movie just looks really silly, and I think but it also has something on its mind, which I think is really interesting. But yeah, it's Taika, it's Scarlett Johansson, all these other Sam Rockwell, all these other great people that you mentioned. It looks hilarious. Fox Searchlight is releasing it, which I'm just always interested in whatever they do. So it just looks really, really stupid and irreverent, and I'm just really excited for that kind of movie.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm definitely looking forward to this one as well. I'm looking forward to see kind of, as you said, kind of pushing the boundaries a little bit, and also kind of having something on its mind, something to say. And anti-hate satire is what he's billing this movie as. So that's a pretty exciting concept. Zombieland Double Tap also drops that weekend, the sequel to Zombieland. This is one that I'm pretty excited for just because I enjoyed the first film a lot. I hope that this movie is just a fun, enjoyable time. I don't need too much. I just want to have some fun watching this movie. Were you a fan of the first film? I probably have asked you this, but refresh for me.
Yeah, the Zombieland's fun. I think it's one of those movies that has like a rare, like close to like 100% approval rating. Like I don't think I've ever talked to anybody. It was like, yeah, Zombieland fucking sucks. Like I like just everyone likes that movie, so it makes sense for a sequel to come out. I mean, I feel like it's a little delayed. It's definitely hitting while the iron is cold in that sense, but that's just kind of Sony for you. That's a whole other podcast for me talking about Sony. But yeah, the trailer looks fun. Woody Harrelson doing Woody Harrelson things, and Emma Stone is delightful, and Jesse Eisenberg is also just great. Abigail Breslin's really fun too. So if they can just capture that dynamic of the group that they had in the first movie, then that's kind of all you need from a movie like this, and that's just kind of what I'm hoping for. It looks fun, and that's all I need. But one thing that's really interesting that I want to throw back to you is this the one big Halloween movie? Because I don't really see any big horror movies coming out. I mean, we have Halloween coming out next year, but it doesn't feel like there's like a big or even just interesting horror movie coming out, which feels weird, right?
Yeah, no, I definitely see what you're saying there. I know that we've had. I remember kind of back in the winter heading into spring, I thought that this would kind of be the year of horror, just considering what was dropping. I'm trying to think back to that time. I know we had Us that came out, but that was a while back. Maha had a pretty interesting first trailer, and people were excited for it, but that didn't turn out that great. Brightburn also was an interesting film that didn't turn out that great in most people's eyes. Midsummer came out obviously a few last month, and that's kind of done and gone. So yeah, I don't really know if there's going to be too much in terms of the big Halloween movie this year. I know the Shining sequel, Doctor Sleep, will come out, but that will be more of um, that'll be more of into November. It's going to be interesting to kind of see what happens in terms of just horror films. Maybe we'll see some random one drop. I know The Lighthouse will probably get some sort of wide release date at some point, but that's not going to expand. I don't think that'll expand to 3,000, 4,000 theaters. So yeah, this might be that Halloween movie. Kind of weird, but this might be it. So after that, November 1st, we're going to see Terminator Dark Fate. This is a film that they're trying to reignite the franchise here with the fifth Terminator movie. I thought the trailer had some enjoyable moments in it. Bringing back Arnold, bringing back we got Sarah Connor returning in here. I don't know for sure. I think that this franchise has lost me, but I'm obviously intrigued just because James Cameron is back to produce this thing. I don't know in what capacity, but this is a movie that I hope it's good, but I have almost no expectations. How about you?
Yeah, I'm the same way. This kind of feels like the last gasp of this Terminator franchise as currently constructed. This is kind of doing the same thing that Halloween did, where it's forget about those movies that suck, and we're just going to do a direct sequel to the ones you really like, which I think is a really good idea. But also, if like that fails, and it's like, what plan is there? Like, there is literally no other alternative than just like sitting on Terminator for a while and then maybe rebooting it totally in like 20 years. I mean, that's really about it. But really interesting director Tim Miller, I think, is really fun, and James Cameron and him were kind of working on the plans for this movie for quite a long time. So I think there's some interesting things in this movie that it's hiding that we'll kind of get to see there. But yeah, it's not really. We're at this point now where it's Terminator. You have to kind of win us back. We're not going to embrace you with open arms. You've heard us too many times. You really need to do something special. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting, and obviously, I'm going to go see it. But I don't know. It's another one of these that could be a big hit or miss type of movie. I really don't have much of a feel for what people are interested in with it, or if they're interested at all. I have no idea at all.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, when you think about it, I mean, in addition to Linda Hamilton and Arnold, Edward Furlong's back as John Connor as well, and Tim Miller, as you said, solid director. He's a fun director, and I think that the potential is there to make this movie good. I think that the movie does have potential, but I'm not going into it. I don't think I'm going to be going into it really expecting it to blow me away. I'm just going to kind of see what it has to offer, and I think that might be a good thing for this franchise.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where you got to do something really inventive at this point. Like, if it can't just be like a solid, like pretty standard movie, because that's just not going to ignite the excitement that you need to kind of redo this franchise on the fly. It has to be something special, which is that's just a tough bar to set for yourself in blockbuster filmmaking.
Yeah, for sure. The other kind of release that weekend, it's a limited release. It's going to get its Netflix debut November the 27th. That's Martin Scorsese's The Irishman. We're going to see Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, the return of Joe Pesci. This is a very, very promising movie. The trailer was very good. I still don't really know how everything's going to turn out with the de-aging and the CGI. The trailer, I couldn't quite tell what my mood was towards it. But yes, as you said, this movie is 3 hours and 30 minutes long. I think that's quite interesting, quite cool. And I think Scorsese and his crew here of De Niro, Pacino, and Pesci, I think they're coming out for one. I don't think they'll be doing a movie together again after this. I think this might be the last big thing from that kind of crew. Scorsese's going to direct more movies, but I think that this might be their last kind of go at it together with his kind of gang that he's made so many movies with. I'm really excited for this movie. The trailer, as I said, was good. And just the fact that it's 3 hours and 30 minutes long, I think he's going to have the utmost creative control over this movie. And that's kind of probably one of the benefits of having Netflix as the distributor.
Yeah, I've even heard reports that it's like even pushing 4 hours too. That it's maybe near 3:45, which is just, I mean, it's a mob movie directed by Scorsese, so I'm in for as many hours as it wants to be. He's just one of the few filmmakers that if he makes a movie that's 10 hours long, I'd be like, sure, I'm here for all of it. It's Scorsese. I think he's deserved every right to make that kind of movie, and um, it's just, I can't wait. I mean, yeah, like the one thing here is like, is that de-aging going to be distracting? It looks from the trailer that they're kind of just de-aging them to like maybe like 15 years ago. It looks Pacino looks like he's like in mid 2000s, like maybe like around like 2004, 2005 form. Um, just who knows? It's maybe they do it. Maybe they pull it off. Who knows? I, you can't doubt Scorsese at this point. Silence, even though no one saw it a few years ago, was really great. One of my favorite movies of 2016. Just a really solid thing, and he just keeps chugging along. And it's funny because I just rewatched Jackie Brown recently, and I'm just like, man, Robert De Niro is so fucking good, and I just can't wait to see him in a movie again. And yeah, Harvey Keitel in there too, and Ray Romano and Jim Norton is in there too as Don Rickles,
Yep.
which is just incredible to me. So I'm in. It's The Irishman. It's another one where Netflix is bringing back a strain of movie that we just don't see a lot of because there's no way that this movie as constructed would come out with for any other studio. It would probably be like 2.5 hours at the most. Um, and that's really about it. But yeah, it's really exciting to kind of see Scorsese do whatever he wants.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, you could definitely make the argument that he is the greatest director of all time. That's an argument that you could definitely make. Um, so to see him kind of be able to have full creative control over this and uh, make it as long as he really wants, I mean, that's pretty exciting in and of itself. So that is going to be getting kind of a limited release on November the 1st. It's not going to go to any big theater chains. That news kind of broke recently. Netflix couldn't reach a deal with the major theater chains, so even Scorsese couldn't bridge the gap there. But you're going to see a lot of independent theaters pick this movie up and play it. They're still trying to reach a deal with a couple more major theater chains, but several have already said that they're not going to be playing this movie. So it's probably not going to be hitting 4,000 theaters, but we definitely will see this film in probably more theaters than Roma played in, but not quite a huge wide release. But it's going to drop on Netflix November the 27th, and that's going to be pretty exciting. November the 6th, Marriage Story will get also a limited release. That's Noah Baumbach's movie, also a Netflix movie. It will drop on streaming December the 6th. I love how they kind of presented this movie with the trailers, kind of showing two sides of the marriage with Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson. I know you're super excited for this movie, so I'm going to let you take it away.
Yeah, I've been thinking about it, and I think there's a strong possibility that this is my most anticipated movie of the fall season. I just love Noah Baumbach so much. I've watched Frances Ha like multiple times in the past couple weeks, and I've also watched the Meyerowitz stories a lot recently. I just really love him and what his vibe is, and he's just really interested in telling these character driven stories, and he's just so great at setting scenes and having memorable pieces of dialogue, and I just can't get enough of it. So seeing him just do a divorce movie, it's probably just going to be the most gut wrenching thing ever. And yeah, Adam Driver in there, who's probably one of the best actors working today. You can definitely make that argument. And Scarlett Johansson, really great to see her not doing anything Black Widow related. I just love seeing her act, and I think we've kind of forgotten how good of an actress she is in the past few years. But yeah, this movie looks just really great, and it's really interesting. It's got some real life intrigue because it's apparently about Baumbach's relationship with Jennifer Jason Leigh, which didn't end very well. So this is a rich text of a movie, and I'm just really excited for it.
Quite it's quite ambitious, so I'm definitely looking forward to that as well. So that's going to be hitting Netflix on December the 6th with a limited kind of theater release on November 6th. November 8th is a pretty crowded weekend as well. We're going to see Mike Flanagan's Doctor Sleep, the sequel to The Shining. Ewan McGregor as Danny Torrance, I think, is good casting because I think Ewan McGregor is a terrific actor. However, I could see this movie either being great or being awful, and I really want it to be great. Huge fan of The Shining. Um, But I don't know. I think it's going to be interesting to kind of see a sequel so many years in the future. But what do you make of this movie?
And it's really interesting, right? Because it's like, oh, like a delayed sequel to one of the best movies, probably one of the best horror movies ever. It kind of feels like some sort of like play for box office or just money in general. It feels a little cynical, but then, I mean, the story itself kind of follows that, where Danny is grown up and it's many years later. So it makes narrative sense that it's coming so far later down the road. But I mean, it's Ewan McGregor, who I feel like is very picky with the roles he has. We don't see him a ton, and he's always in interesting things, even if the final product isn't tremendous. But so, which I am just very fascinated by this movie. I think Mike Flanagan is. I mean, he's right up there with James Wan. You can make the argument he's probably like the best mainstream horror director working right now, between The Haunting of Hill House and all his Gerald's Game and Ouija 2 and just all these other really interesting horror movies that he's made recently. I'm very intrigued. The trailer is really interesting and has a lot of fun callbacks to The Shining, and I feel like there's a lot of visual style to this thing that I think is going to be really fascinating. You got Rebecca Ferguson being weird there as one of the villains. I'm in. It looks interesting.
Yeah, for sure. This is a movie that I'm definitely skeptical of, but you do have a pretty good director behind the camera there, and Mike Flanagan, and Ewan McGregor is a great actor, as I said, and I think that it has the potential. And yeah, the trailer was pretty great. Also, that weekend we're going to see Last Christmas come out. Last Christmas, Amelia Clarke is in this, and Henry Golding is in this. He's really breaking out lately these last few years, especially since Crazy Rich Asians. I thought the trailer was way too much. I don't know if you've seen the trailer. It pretty much showed everything in the movie.
Yeah, I'm curious if there's some other twist going on here. I feel like the internet and Twitter's gone crazy about like, oh, it's the George Michael song. So is he going to actually give her his heart to save her, or is he been like? Is it one of those things where he's been a ghost this whole time? Or I feel like there's something more there, but I don't really know if that'll play out very well either. But in another sense, like it's Paul Feig, who's, I mean, when he's not doing a Ghostbusters movie, he's a really great director. He's just really fun, and he's really good with character, and he's really good at genre hopping. I mean, in A Simple Favor, he did all the Spy and other Melissa McCarthy movies before that, and Bridesmaids. This is kind of like one of the few movies that's where it's just two charming actors being super charming. Which, I mean, that's not like the greatest like of achievements, but like that looks kind of fun. It looks like Amelia Clarke and Henry Golding will have really good chemistry, and that might be all that people need for a movie like this.
Yeah, for sure. His kind of track record as the director has been, I think, mostly good. Ghostbusters being probably one of the bigger stains on his track record, but he hasn't done too many movies. But Bridesmaids is a pretty well acclaimed movie. A Simple Favor was pretty solid. So I don't know. I'm pretty interested to see what this movie's all about and what kind of, maybe if there are twists, because I mean we'll see. We'll see if there are twists. I hope there are, because the trailer. If not, then it's a mess. But another release that weekend, a very expensive release, probably around $100 million budget here. It's a war film directed by Roland Emmerich, Midway, and this is a director that always loves his big budget movies. Are you a fan of him? Are you looking forward to this movie?
I think I was a fan of him probably when he made Independence Day, which I guess doesn't really make sense because that's like when I was born. But he just hasn't been very good for like many years, I feel like. And like I think his last movie was Independence Day 2, right? Which
Hmm.
was just
Yep.
like the worst. Like it was just terrible. And I don't really understand how this guy got another $100 million budget. I mean, I've this whole podcast I've been kind of talking about like, oh, I don't know how this movie's going to do or how this one's going to do, but I know for a fact that Midway is probably going to be the movie that really bombs. Um, I mean, it looks like a overly saccharine disaster movie, which is kind of just everything Roland Emmerich does. And we have 1917 coming out later this year, which is another war movie, which just looks better in every respect. Um, so I think this is one of those things that's just it's just not it's going to get swallowed up by all its competition.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And it's weird because this is a director that I think he's still getting all this money because he's had so many box office hits in the past, but it's been a long time since he's really been able to make a ton of money at the box office. But he always seems to get massive, massive budgets for his movies. I mean, 2012 was a film that when I was younger, I dug that movie when I was a kid. I thought that special effects were great. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is great to see. This is so exciting. And scary, but that's a movie that obviously hasn't aged great. I mean, I would still watch it now just as kind of a fun film to watch, but that's a movie that he got $200 million for it. It made a ton of money, but since then he really hasn't had many hits in terms of box office. I mean, White House Down, he was given $150 million. That movie made barely over 200 million. Independence Day Resurgence, a budget of 165, didn't even make 400 million. Made less money than the original, even with all the inflation that's happened in the 20 years since the original when that movie released. I mean, that's just not great. But he's still getting huge budgets. I mean, $100 million for this movie. I definitely agree. It doesn't have any buzz. 1917's coming out. I think that this movie's definitely going to crash and burn. Do you think that this movie affects 1917's box office at all?
I mean, like maybe on the margins a little bit, but I just think out of those two, I think there people are more tuned into 1917. Like I feel like more people are just aware of that movie in general. It's a Lionsgate movie, Midway, and so they sometimes have trouble generating buzz for their movies, unless they're John Wick. I mean, but other than that, it's like yeah, it's just a kind of a weird thing that it just feels like it really feels like a movie from the 1990s, where it's the wife that was waiting for the hero back home when she's cleaning the dishes and she sees like all the disaster happening around her. It just feels very old fashioned and not in a good way. I'm just not really into it at all.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that most of his movies feel like 1990s. Um, the next weekend after that, we're going to see Charlie's Angels. That's a movie that has gotten some buzz from the trailer. Looks like it might be fun. I'm not too sure. What do you make of Charlie's Angels?
Um, it's I think it's really interesting because I really like Kristen Stewart, but I feel like she's kind of in the same place as Robert Pattinson, where I feel like just the casual movie fan doesn't really know that she's gone on and done some really great work since Twilight. But yeah, I don't really know if this movie is going to do very well. I mean, Elizabeth Banks is directing it, and her last directorial project was I think Pitch Perfect 2, which was you could probably take it or leave it, and I feel like I'll probably just take it or leave this film as well. It looks fine. It's a lot of beautiful women coming together to be spies, which could be really fun. But it's got Noah Centineo too. It's like his first non-Netflix thing, probably, as far as I can remember. But yeah, this movie just looks fine. I think it's another chance of just something that people might just pass on.
Yeah, I think that if it kind of markets itself in the right way, I think it could catch a little bit of fire and make a little bit of cash. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not 100% sure of how this movie's going to do. We're going to have to wait a little bit to see. That weekend, also, a Ford v Ferrari is coming out. Christian Bale, Matt Damon. I'm pretty excited for that film. I know you're pretty excited too. The trailer was great, and James Mangold, it's his first film since Logan, I believe. So that's going to
Hmm.
be interesting. It's also getting some festival release dates in September. It's coming out, dropping in TIFF in September as well. So I'm definitely looking forward to that movie. That's November the 15th. Are you looking forward to Ford v Ferrari?
Yep, and this movie it looks like a very great like movie star vehicle where it's just really entertaining A-list actors just being really good at what they do, and that's just being a great personality. Christian Bale lost all of his vice weight already, which is just kind of crazy. I hope
Hmm.
I hope he's okay because that's just a lot of stress to put on your body. But yeah, just him being really him really going for it, and Matt Damon is just always great. Yeah, this movie looks like a really fun kind of just like Go America type of movie, but in a good way. And just it looks really fun, and I'm really looking forward to this kind of. It's definitely a prestige movie that it doesn't get made a lot anymore. So that looks really cool. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, for sure. And that it's a movie that I really enjoyed the trailer. I think it'll be a good theater watch as well, and it could be a movie that may have some awards draw just in terms of maybe sound design. But yeah, it's a film that I'm definitely looking forward to. So that's Ford v Ferrari, November the 15th. And the last weekend we're going to touch on before we kind of get into the holiday movie season with Thanksgiving, then into December with Christmas and Boxing Day and New Year's and whatnot, is November the 22nd. We're going to see A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, the Tom Hanks, Mr. Rogers biopic film come out. I know your thoughts on this movie. I'm looking forward to it. I know you're not as much as me looking forward to this film. I thought the trailer was great. Personally, I think that it has great potential, but I can see where you're coming from. You have anything to add on A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood?
Yeah, I kind of lumped this movie together with the Tubman movie that's coming out with that's starring Cynthia Erivo. I mean, it just looks like it's probably going to be just a very solid performance of in the part of playing an historical figure that's surrounded by a pretty standard movie. And that just doesn't really get me too excited. But I'm sure, I mean, it's Tom Hanks. He's America's dad. He's going to be great. He's going to be really awesome in this movie, and he's going to warm all our hearts. But the movie, the rest of the movie, it looks like I can take it or leave it. So that's just, I mean, I'm sure it's going to be really cute and really exciting. And Fred Rogers just has a way of warming my heart. So if it captures like a tenth of the emotion that was in the documentary that came out last year, then it'll be a pretty solid movie. I just can't get too excited for it.
I can see where you're coming from, but I definitely want my heart warmed from this movie. I want to see Tom Hanks kind of be in his element and give a great performance, and I think he will. So I'm pretty excited. Frozen 2 is the other film coming out on November the 22nd, on the weekend of November the 22nd. This is a movie that is going to make a ton of money, and it had to happen. It's pretty far removed from the first movie. The first movie came out in 2014, I believe. So this is kind of a long time since the last movie, and it's kind of a long awaited sequel. Were you a fan of the first movie at all?
I'm kind of. I mean, I'm not like the biggest fan of Frozen. I mean, I'm not going to be that guy who shits on like the one thing that everyone likes. It's fine. It's one of those movies I didn't have too strong of a reaction to. It's got some really fun music. But I think that Olaf just bothers me, and I'm still getting scarred from his 45-minute long short that played in front of Coco a few years ago, which was just the worst thing. But yeah, this movie's going to make a shit ton of money. It may even, dare I say, outgross The Rise of Skywalker later this year. It's going to do crazy business.
I could definitely see that happening, and I'm kind of in the same boat as you. I think it was a good movie. I enjoyed it. I think that a sequel had to happen with just how much money it made. And sorry, I just want to kind of change what I said there. 2014 was not when it came out. It came out in 2013, almost 6 years ago. It's weird that we had to wait 6 years for this. But yeah, this is going to make a ton of money, and I could definitely see it outgrossing The Rise of Skywalker. I hope it kind of bring some more fun music into the realm for Disney. I did enjoy the trailer though. What have you kind of made from the trailer? I thought it's a little bit edgier than the first movie. It looks like.
Yeah, I feel like you're definitely right in that sense. But I wonder, like, because Disney does this a lot with their movies, where I feel like all the Marvel movies, the first trailer comes out, and it's like, oh, it's very serious, and there's a lot of stakes going on, and then the second trailer comes out, and it's just like a lot of lighthearted fun, and that's where all the quips come in. And you're like, oh yeah, I remember this is a Disney movie. So I mean, it's probably going to be more. It's not. I don't want to say more of the same in a condescending way, but it's going to be a lot of what fans of Frozen loved, and it's going to be a lot of great music, a lot of colorful, bright characters, and everyone's going to have fun with it. And that's just. I'm sure it's going to be very well animated and produced. It's going to be. It's a slam dunk movie it's kind of too big to fail. It's going to do great.
Yeah, for sure. So that kind of rounds up the fall movie season and kind of the schedule for the fall slate. Some really exciting stuff in there, and I hope all the listeners are a little bit more educated on what's coming out in the fall movie season. Thanks a lot, Nick, for coming on. It was a great episode. What's top two for you, most excited and most anticipated movies of the fall movie season?
Well, definitely Marriage Story is probably my number one. And then after that, man, there's a lot that I'm just really interested in. I mean, with the news that Ad Astra is getting good reviews, that's really skyrocketing up my list. Throw the Joker in there too, Irishman. Twist my arm, I would probably say Ad Astra. I love James Gray and I love space movies, so I think that's probably my two. How about you?
I'm gonna go Ad Astra and Joker for this one. Those are two films that I've been looking forward to for a while, and as you said, kind of the reassurance with the great news out of Venice is great for Ad Astra and Joker. I'm just super pumped for. So that's kind of my two. It should be a great fall movie season though, and we'll reconvene in a few months on this topic because I definitely want to see how you liked all these films, and kind of when we get closer to award season, I would like to do maybe a for your consideration episode with you and talk about some of our favorite movies of the fall. But for sure, a great episode. Thanks for coming on, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, buddy.